Hello, I am Jaclyn Steele, and this is part 5 of the story behind my single Didn't Break Me and my ebook Didn't Break Me. It is called The Breakdown, The Breakthrough, and the part where I write Didn't Break Me. I hadn't kept food down while I was away, not because it wasn't delicious, but because my constant anxiety made me nauseous. And I hadn't slept for what felt like a lifetime. I touched American soil like an empty seashell washes up on the sand. My husband wrapped me in his arms. We drove home, and I was greeted with a hand-drawn "Welcome Home" chalk mural and 3 dogs that were so excited I was home that they were literally smiling. I felt relief, but I also felt different. I couldn't place my finger on what I was feeling, but it was just as well because I didn't have time to fall apart. We were on a flight to Kansas City for a wedding within a few days. I tried to be myself, but I was posing. I felt shell-shocked and confused and tricked and betrayed. I had trusted her. Was something deeply wrong with me? Was I a total fool? Were all my free-spirited tendencies just ignorant naivete? We returned home, and then we're off again. This time, we were driving, those damn expensive last-minute flights, to the Midwest for my grandmother's memorial service. It had been delayed since she passed away so close to Christmas, and we had family all over the country that wouldn't have been able to attend. I had waited until the last minute to decide if I should go. My father and I still weren't speaking, and I was not in a good headspace, but my grandmother deserved respect, and I wanted to pay it. Sam went with me. The whole trip was arduous, physically and mentally. It was so cold, and snow blanketed the ground. Going back to my hometown was always a challenge for me. It is the seat of my adolescent pain. It sounds so dramatic, but I can almost feel the oxygen fleeing my body as the space between me and my hometown decreases. I asked my dad if we could have a private conversation before my grandmother's service to clear the air. He politely declined, but said he did want to talk at a time we wouldn't be interrupted. I didn't understand in that moment what the interruption would have been, but I soon found out. It greeted me as I opened the doors to my grandmother's memorial service. I don't want to go into the details because they really aren't that important. What is important is the feeling I had as I left that day. Our reconciliation wasn't a priority. I wasn't a priority. And as hard as I had fought to be, as many times as I had shown up and tried to love through and love past, I wasn't successful. I just couldn't get through. My heart broke all over again, and I felt my mind dissociate from my body. I couldn't keep doing this. Sam flew out for a real estate conference, and I prepared to drive home. When my 92-year-old grandfather, my mom's dad, found out that I was planning to make the drive alone, it's like a 15-hour trip, he said, "No granddaughter of mine is going to travel that far by herself." I guess I must have forgotten to tell him that I had just been to the Middle East. But God love that man. He is so cool. And if I'm perfectly honest, I was looking forward to a peaceful drive by myself so I could think and decompress. But when he told me he was coming with, I couldn't refuse. When else would I have this opportunity to travel with him? The drive back was long. It should have taken 15 hours or so, but it ended up taking far longer. Traveling with my grandfather slowed things down a bit, but being with him was a privilege. I think the universe knew that my aching heart needed some fatherly love. And I'm crying writing this as I realize how tenderly God shows up for us in our deepest moments of need. We got back to Georgia in one piece, and Grandpa stayed for a few days. I had so much fun taking him to see horses, his favorite animal, and eating cookies. He has the world's biggest sweet tooth, and spending quality time with him. On his last day in Georgia, I got him all checked in at the airport and reluctantly handed him over to the employee that would be taking him safely to his gate. He sat down in the wheelchair. He looked at me, and then he looked at this sweet employee, and then he looked back at me. He started crying, and in between gulps of air, he whispered, "I love you." And he told the employee that I had been so much help to him. I started sobbing in departures at Hartsfield Jackson as I watched him being wheeled away. I walked back to my car with my sunglasses on and got in. Fortunately, Sam was in the driver's side because I couldn't see through my tears. I was lucky that I got in the right vehicle. That was the beginning of my breaking point. By the skin of my teeth, I had been holding it together the past 6 months, but saying goodbye that day to my grandfather was the last straw. I'll never forget sitting at my desk in my office staring at my computer in early March, just a few days after he had left. Tears were streaming down my face, but I couldn't seem to make a sound. It was my rock bottom. I felt the pieces of my life pooling around my ankles. I was 17 again, trying to make sense out of circumstances that were nonsensical. My soul screamed in my direction. I had been intellectualizing my trauma since it had started so many years ago. I thought I had dealt with it. I had been to therapy. I'd had treatment for PTSD. I'd read so many self-help books, they were starting to become predictable. The one thing I hadn't done, though, and the one thing I was now powerless to deny, was feeling my pain. It came crashing in with tsunami force and beat me until I was numb with it. Being molested at 5 years old, religious shame, perfectionism, anorexia, ambition, failure, a broken family, lies sold as truth, a new family where mine once was, feeling forgotten, feeling replaced, feeling invisible, frantically searching for worthiness, feeling like I would never, ever, ever be enough. Broken boundaries, broken tapes on repeat in my head, broken dreams, self-loathing and introspection that made me dizzy with despair. I sunk into it, and for the first time in my life, I felt it all. I was powerless against it. It had piled up so high and surrounded me so tight that I couldn't run. I was swallowed by a whale of pain and trauma, just like Jonah. I couldn't intellectualize it away anymore. The only way out was through. It sucked, and I was so depressed. The kind of depressed where you feel a sense of relief thinking about accidentally crashing your car into a tree. The dam in my heart and mind that had once been so sound was gone, vanished like a thief in the night. But like Paulo Suela says, it's always darkest before the dawn. During that period, I thought my pain had broken me. I really didn't think I would ever be the same. But now I understand the purification process. I had to walk through the fire of pain to rid myself of the dross. I couldn't see it as it was happening, but I get it now. In accepting my pain, I made space for my healing. I saw my self-limiting beliefs as clear as day. I saw bits and pieces of what I thought was my identity melt away. I felt exposed, and I felt raw, and I felt vulnerable. But I also felt free. And I found something that had been buried long, long ago. My voice. I learned what it felt like to speak and own my truth. Not 80% of it or 90% of it like I had been sharing for so long. All of it. And I learned to accept it. I stopped fighting it and wishing it away. And in the process, I realized that my deepest pain made way for my greatest strength. We aren't meant to be perfect. We are meant to be whole. And sometimes pain is the path to that wholeness. I think life is messy because we are meant to learn from it. It will squeeze and squeeze and squeeze us until we think we are going to suffocate. And in those last moments where the air is rapidly withdrawing from our lungs, we are faced with a choice. To continue doing what we always have been, or to face the unknown and expand into healthier versions of ourselves. The choice is ours, but in my experience, it's a solo journey. No one can heal for me. No one can save me from myself. No one can take away my truth. No one can take away my pain. No one can break me unless I let them. But I have to choose to do the hard work of healing. Ultimately, forgiveness isn't for the offender, it's for us. Because when we learn to forgive others, we can open the door to a much, much more difficult process. Forgiving ourselves. My pain didn't break me. It led me to the truest version of myself. I had to break down to build back up in a better form. And the result is beautiful. This was one of the hardest years of my life, but I am so grateful for it. I learned so much. And yes, I'm imperfect, but I'm powerful. I'm a fighter, but I'm gentle. I'm wounded, but I'm also alive. All this pain, all these experiences showed me just how strong and brave and courageous and resilient and filled to the brim with love I truly am. And out of that love poured new music and the very words you are reading right now or listening to right now. Life is so very difficult sometimes, but it will only break us if we let it. I am not broken. I am brilliant. And so are you.